Out Loud, a program designed to explore in-depth interviews with writers to hear that words have voices. Our hostess for today's program is Teresa Miller, Executive Director for the Oklahoma Center for Poets and Writers at OSU Tulsa.
Hello everyone, I'm Teresa Miller and welcome to Writing Out Loud. My very special guest today is the internationally known author Isabel Allende. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh,
it's lovely to be in Oklahoma.
Well, it's lovely to have you here, and you've had quite a trip. You've been in Spain and Bloomington. Tell us about your week in Spain.
Well, I was invited to a special week in which they would invite scholars from different places to study my work. It was so weird to be sitting there at a table listening to what other people think that I have written, because the truth is that, and I think that most writers will tell you the same thing, we write out of intuition. I don't know that we really know what we write about. People find things in the text that maybe we never intended to put there.
What an incredible honor, though, a whole week set aside to study your work. Are you sometimes amazed by the impact that you have had on people's lives?
I am. I'm amazed and flattered, but mainly grateful. I feel that there are millions of people out there who share with me not only a story, but a way of thinking. It's as if what I believe to be true in this world and to be good is shared by so many people.
You said something in your wonderful website that struck me, and I've been thinking about it a long time, that in spite of all these wonderful awards you received for your work, and they are legion, that you consider your major accomplishments to be related to family and not your writing. And I wondered if you might elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, I think that the writing is something extraordinary that has happened to me. But I was already 40 when my first book was published, and I had a life before that. And I don't know for how long I will be writing. I'm 60 now, and I don't know if in 10 years I will be still writing. But I know that I will have a family, and I will know that what has really been the continuity in my life is the love I have shared. First with my mother. I mean, I have an extraordinary mother who is still alive. We write every day. We fax each other every day.
Do you live close to each
No,
other?
she lives in Chile and I live in California. I have a very good marriage, which is a blessing. Children, grandchildren, friends, and I think that that's my greatest achievement.
Well, in fact, in the midst of your busy schedule, you've been out looking for a birthday present for your granddaughter.
Yeah, she's turning 10.
Oh, that's a great age. Yeah, and this wonderful novel of yours, The House of the Spirits, it's dedicated to your grandmother and to your mother. How did they influence this first novel of yours?
I would have not been able to write that book because that book is about my family. It looks like a very strange family. I really exaggerated a few things, but the main characters are taken from my grandparents, my mother, some uncles. It's really the story of my country and the story of my family.
What did you think of the movie version of The House of the Spirits?
Actually, I liked the movie of The House of the Spirits. I thought that although it had a very Scandinavian flavor, not a very Latin American flavor, it was still a very decent and well-made movie.
I thought Vanessa Redgrave was wonderful in it.
Yes, and also Glenn Close.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Glenn Close.
They just did a beautiful job. But as a writer, does it seem strange to you to see your story in a new dimension like that?
No, it doesn't seem strange. It seems I feel detached from the story once the story is published.
Oh, you do? You're able to distance yourself?
Totally. I never read my books again. And then other creators do other things. My books have been transformed into musicals, operas, ballets, theater plays, movies, and I don't feel that I'm responsible for whatever the outcome is. Once you give it away, it's gone.
Exactly. You know, and you were telling me this wonderful story about a book you picked up to read, and you turned to the first chapter, and there's a reference to The House of the Spirits, and then there's another one.
Yeah, well, this is a book about the Virgin Mary, amazingly, but it's a novel, and it's a very funny novel. And there's a reference, when I just stumbled upon it, the character in the book is reading The House of the Spirits. So that was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Weren't you just pleasantly surprised?
Yeah, very surprised.
Just the way that your work just unfolds where you least expect it.
You never know for whom you write. When Noriega was arrested in Panama, he had 2 books with him, the Bible and the House of the Spirits.
I hadn't heard that. That's a wonderful story. You know, this takes place, the House of the Spirits, in a South American country. And yet it seems to me to cross boundaries. What do you see as some of the universal themes of your work that are not located to just region?
I think that there are certain themes that keep coming back when I write. Women's issues, social issues about justice, poverty, inequality. Politics come up a lot. A certain search for spirituality, which is not related to religion. I think violence, death, love, that comes up a lot.
Oh, it does. Are you finding answers, or is the answer the less important issue, and it's really more asking the question?
I think the question is what keeps coming back, and in 20 years of writing, I don't have any answers. I only know that there are many people who are asking the same questions. I'm not alone.
No, you're not. And that's why, Flannery O'Connor once said one focuses on a region to show what transcends it. And I think you do that so beautifully because your novels speak to all of us. I grew up in the Cherokee community, in a little town.
But probably your family was like that one.
They are so much so. I think we're related. I think we're related in this, and it.
I get letters sometimes from Finland or from Turkey, and people say this family is like mine, or this person is like my husband, or whatever.
You live in Northern California now.
Yeah.
Have you been able to establish roots there, or do you feel like your home is everywhere? Is it within you?
I'm going to say something that is very corny.
Okay.
I think that my homeland is my husband. Wherever he is, my roots are.
So he helps you feel connected, and he travels with you a great deal. He's a photographer.
Yeah, my husband is an American lawyer, and he loves photography, and he's also a writer. And I have been able to find a home with him because I have been a traveler. First, I was the daughter of diplomats, a traveler. I was a political refugee for 13 years. And now I'm an immigrant in this country for 15 years. And so I think that I could live almost anywhere. My roots are in my books, in my memory, and in the man I love.
Another very special relationship in your life was with your late daughter, Paula. Tell us about the book, Paula, and how it came about.
My daughter, Paula, had a rare condition called porphyria, which should not be fatal, but there was neglect in the hospital in Madrid, and because of this neglect, she had severe brain damage. She was in a coma for a year, and eventually she died in my arms at home. Fortunately, I was able to take her out of the hospital, bring her across the world all the way to California, and take care of her at home. And after she died, I wrote a book called Paula, which has been the most meaningful and, I would say, successful of all my books. The one that has brought more letters and more feedback from the readers. Not from parents who have lost children, but from young people who identify with Paula and somehow seem to think for the first time in their lives that they are mortal. That when we are young, we think that life, that death is something that happens to other people.
Sure.
Never happens to us.
Exactly. Well, it's a lovely book.
But it's not a sad book. It's not a book about death. It's about life.
It's about going on and preserving the memories and the spirits of those that we love. I wondered if writing this book helped you through your grief.
It did. It helped me to go through the first year after her death, which was horrible. And just the routine of getting up in the morning and forcing myself to get in front of the computer and write helped me enormously. But also to go through the steps of what had happened and revisit the grief and the horror of what was that year helped me very much.
We were talking about this yesterday, and that I had to deal with my grief that way, and somehow if you can put your grief between margins and then write the end, it's a new beginning of sorts. Do you write in Spanish or English?
Only Spanish. I can write a speech in English, and I do, but fiction is something that doesn't happen in the brain. It happens somewhere here, in the womb, or in the heart, and I don't process it. It just sort of slowly shapes up and flows, and that can only happen in my own language. You know, when I talk to my grandchildren, or when I talk to animals, or when I cook or I make love, it's always in Spanish. It's something that I don't have to think. It just happens in Spanish.
And you've worked with the same translator, is that correct? Yeah. What's that like, having your words translated?
My work is translated to 27 languages, so I don't know how it is translated in most of them. I know that the English version is very good, and I could guarantee that, for example, the German one is very good too, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to sell it in Germany. Germany is a very literate country where a bad translation would never sell. So the publisher takes very good care of that. But there are other countries where they translate, I don't know how, but the story somehow is carried through somehow.
Someone called me the other day, a fan of yours, and she reads your books in Spanish, and she said, you know, I think they're better in Spanish than English. She said, I love them in English. Do you ever feel that they lose a little of something in translation? Or?
You know, language is like blood. It's so personal. You are only yourself in your own language. I live in English. I'm married to an American. My grandchildren don't speak Spanish. I talk to them in Spanish, but they answer in English. And yet I know that in English I'm not me. In English there's always a filter. It is as if I relate to the world through a very fine gauze, a very fine filter that changes everything a little bit, as if it was foggy. In Spanish I'm me. In English I am me with a costume.
So there's sort of these two different worlds that you navigate. It's very interesting in Daughter of Fortune, because the California and Chile connections there, and you write about the California gold rush, and I'm sure you had to do some research on that. So that when you went back and investigated the history of the California gold rush, did that make you feel a little bit more a part of the history here? Is that kind of an interesting experience?
But really I did that before. When I moved to this country in 1987, I moved because I met Willie and I fell in love with him. And I started writing a novel that is called The Infinite Plan that needed a lot of research because I was new in this place. So I researched for 4 years to be able to write that story. And that was my acquaintance with California, with the American dream, with the American way of life, with all that. So it was easier. By the time I wrote Daughter of Fortune, I had lived in this country 13 years, and so I was more acquainted with California at least.
And this book has certainly been successful for you. It was
well, because it was an Oprah selection.
What is it like? What is it like? Tell us, to get on Oprah and to have your book, Oprah Book Club selection. Was that a wonderful experience?
Wonderful. I gained a readership that I would have never reached otherwise. And I also got to meet her, and I had always admired Oprah,
right.
But after I met her, I sort of fell in love with her, because she's so there, so present, so herself. She's such an honest human being that it's refreshing. It's refreshing to know that a woman like her can be successful and rich and powerful, and at the same time be spiritual and honest and friendly. It's wonderful.
What do you feel about the fact that she's decided not to do the book club now?
I understand why she had to stop. I think that the pressure must have been unbearable. The pressure from the writers, the publishers, the editors, the agents, it must have been horrible.
It became more of a commercial pressure on her to do this and to do that, and she resisted. She didn't want to do that.
She chose all the books that she that she presented in the book club. So she had readers that read for her and pre-selected, but then the ones she chose, she had read all those books. And there was a point when I suppose it was just too much pressure. She couldn't do it anymore.
Did you have any idea that Daughter of Fortune was under consideration for
No,
this?
one day the phone rang and I picked it up and she said, "Hello, Isabel, this is Oprah." And I thought it was my son because he makes that kind of joke. And I said, "Uh-huh." And she said, "Yeah, Oprah, like in Winfrey." And then she told me that she had selected the book, she personally.
Oh, what a...
And she also said that the news should not get around before the program. She said if they do, then you lose it.
Oh, but this is such exciting news.
So I said, you better call my husband because he has a big mouth. Oh. And so just call him and tell him to be quiet.
Well, but that had to be a hard secret to keep. You couldn't even tell your children?
Nobody for a week until she announced it.
Oh, my goodness.
And then when she announced it, I could tell. I would talk
ever
about
tempted?
it.
I mean, you're talking to
Of
your
course
mother,
I
writing
was.
to your mother, faxing your mother. Hi, what's
difficult.
new? Oh, nothing. You know, that had to
Yeah, it
to
was
be
difficult.
Did it change your life, would you say,
No,
that experience?
no.
Because
I don't
again,
think
you're
so.
anchored on the inside, aren't you? It's not the trappings of the book world, but it's inside you.
Yeah, I
isn't
think
it?
that the things that have changed my life have been mainly things that I don't control, like the death of my daughter or the military coup in Chile or meeting Willie or that kind of thing.
And you know, we need to talk about the military coup in Chile. What was that like for you? Were you frightened ever?
By one of those extraordinary coincidences, I would call it historic karma. The military coup in Chile happened on Tuesday, September 11th. 1973.
I did not know that.
Almost at the same time of the day of the attack on the World Trade Center. And the military coup in Chile was a terrorist attack on a democracy financed and supported by the CIA. So when the terrorist attack on New York happened in the year 2001, I was in the shower because in California it's 3 hours earlier. Mm-hmm. And I was in the shower when the phone rang, and it was my mother from Chile, and she was crying on the phone, terrified. And I thought it was because she was remembering the military coup in Chile. It was the day of the anniversary of the military coup where so many people died. And she said, "No, turn on the TV, turn on the TV." And I turned on the TV and I saw images that were very similar to the images that I had already seen many, many years before.
So when you hear 9/11, that has double meaning for you. Yes. How did that fleeing during that time, what did that do to you when you see a government toppled? We've not experienced that in my generation. We've not had to live through that. Did it make you distrustful at all or cynical at all?
It changed my life. I became aware that there is a dimension of violence that is always present in our lives, and we manage to ignore it until it hits home. I also realized that in times of crisis you cannot remain neutral. You have to take a position, a stand for what you believe. And I did, and I became a dissident because I did not agree with what was going on.
And you were a journalist.
I was a journalist, so I was informed of the people that were imprisoned and tortured and killed and disappeared. And I started hiding people and smuggling information out of the country, and there was a moment when I had to leave because I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't live in terror. But for Americans to understand what happened there and what has happened in many other Latin American countries and also in Africa and in the Middle East, in many places where the CIA has supported tyrannies that would never be tolerated in this country, people have to imagine what it would be to have the armed forces in this country take over, kill the president, close the Congress, arrest the judges of the Supreme Court, censor the press, and take out all the rights of the people. And this is something that has happened over and over in many governments.
And of course, in your family was a prominent family there.
Well, it was the family of the president, because my uncle was the president of Chile, but that is not the point, because it's not the fact that it was my family or my personal story. It's how it affected 15 million people that lived in that country at that point.
And what about the country today?
The country today is living in a democracy for 12 years, and it's a solid democracy, although still the Congress has senators appointed for life by the dictators, General Pinochet. So still, it's not a full democracy, but it works, and there's a sort of social and political agreement so that we have peace in the country. And now the truth of what happened has finally emerged, and we know what happened, the atrocities that were committed. But of course, you cannot punish everybody that needs to be punished, or you cannot have justice. But at least the truth is there, and that's the beginning of reconciliation and the beginning of healing.
Do you go back there often?
Yeah, I go all the time.
See your mom?
I see my mom.
Does she come to this country often?
Yes, she does.
We want to talk about your new novel, Portrait in Scythia.
Actually, that's not my new novel.
Well, The City of Beasts.
Yeah.
Is your new one, but let's touch on this one, because it picks up on some of the same characters in Daughter of Fortune. Are all stories ongoing for you in a way?
Sometimes I try to get rid of the characters and I can't. They just creep back in the next story, or many years later. Sometimes they come in costume or they come with different names, but I recognize them. I know it's the same kind of character. And when my book was in Oprah, when Daughter of Fortune was in Oprah, Oprah said in the show, "I don't like the ending. I don't like open endings. Why this ending?" And I tried to explain to her that often you don't decide the ending. The story sort of has a way of unfolding, and you can't control everything in a story.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because we can't always put the end on everything, can we, when we finish it? Because life is not really that tidy, and that we can say this is over necessarily.
I don't think that there are endings in life. Life is a process. It's a journey. So we keep walking. And as you said, it's not tidy. It's not like a book.
No.
And when I started writing Portrait in Sepia, this is the story that I wanted to write. It happens in the second half of the 19th century in Chile, and it is a story of war, a story of love and war that I wanted to tell. But then I realized that given the time frame, I could link both books and in a way finish the story that I had not finished in Daughter of Fortune. And then when I was halfway through this book, I realized that these characters could be the ancestors, the grandparents of the characters in my first novel, The House of the Spirits. So in a way, these three books form a trilogy.
So there's a continuity there.
A continuity that actually I wrote in 20 years.
Don't you like that when it works together
Yes,
that way?
I love it.
And don't you feel like you've discovered some sort of truth when you find these connecting threads, that they're leading you somewhere? And or carrying you on the journey, that there's a truth there. Okay, we do want to talk about your very, very latest works, City of the Beast.
Yes, it's coming out in by the middle or end of October, and it's my first book for young adults. So the readers that I'm targeting are 11 years and up. The publishers have marketed it as for all ages. And in many countries there is an edition for adults and another one for kids, which is exactly the same book with a different jacket. So I don't know if it's going to work for kids or for adults or for both. I hope that for both. It's the story of a young American boy, he's 15, from California, who ends up in New York with his grandmother, who is a travel writer. And the grandmother has an assignment, and she has to go to the Amazon and takes the kid with her. And he meets the daughter of the Brazilian guide, and all these people go up the Rio Negro, and they enter into the rainforest, and the girl and the boy get lost. And so it's a journey into nature and back into the Stone Age, but also it's the journey of the soul. It's the journey of the hero. The idea is that this spoiled brat becomes a man in a couple of weeks.
Was it interesting for you to focus on a male character?
Yes, it was very interesting to focus on a teenager, an American boy, and a masculine character, a male. It was really interesting and easy, very easy.
Was it easier than you thought it would be?
Oh, it was so easy. I just felt the character inside, as if it was me. I had no problem at all with the feelings and with everything.
Do some books just come easier
Yes.
for you than others?
Absolutely.
What was the hardest book you ever had to write?
Non-fiction. I wrote Aphrodite, and I wrote a new book that will be published in the spring called My Invented Country, that is about Chile. And those two books have been very difficult to write because with non-fiction you have to be more accurate. The research has to be... I research for books like this, but the research doesn't show. And I have the freedom to handle it any way I want. With non-fiction, you do not have that freedom. So those are the more difficult books for me.
Isabel, thank you so much for being
you.
here. Congratulations on all your awards and your wonderful family.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for joining us on Writing Out Loud.
Writing Out Loud is underwritten by
Koch Industries. Koch is a proud employer of nearly 1,000 Oklahomans. Koch Industries, you know us better than you think.